All right, guys, the list I'm about to share with you is with the most love and respect for Thailand, but there's honestly a harsh reality that we have to face when it comes to visiting places like this. So it's not for everyone, and I'm gonna tell you why. But yeah, I've seen so many clickbaity videos where they're like, oh, hey, don't come to Thailand because how many BJs can you handle? How many good Thai food can you handle? And while it does have things like that, it's not really the case here.
This video is not meant to discourage anyone from coming from Thailand, definitely not. But it is just here as some information with our experiences and to address any, concerns that maybe people might have that they may not think about.
So starting off with number one on this list of people who shouldn't really come to Thailand is anyone with an autoimmune disorder. With the infrastructure here, there's a lot of really dirty water, and you can't really get ice with your drinks. You can't really do a whole lot without risking it. My mother unfortunately has an autoimmune disorder, and I would never advise her to come here just because I would be deathly afraid that she would be getting sick. While we've been here, we've had maybe how many decent meals that made us not throw up or have diarrhea.
As you'll see in a lot of travel videos, there's a lot of people that will go to the street food vendors and they'll get like 30 baht, 50 baht, and it'll be like a little meal, it looks really good and everything like that. But in reality, what we've seen is a lot of that meat has been sitting out for a few hours, and it's definitely not within food safety regulations.
Or it's covered in bugs.
Yes, it is. There's a lot of flies. There's also any sort of soup here is not recommended, as from what I've been able to tell, anytime we got like pho or ramen or that type of thing, a lot of the broth is made with city water. And usually almost immediately after, maybe like an hour or two, we would immediately start having stomach pain and diarrhea and stuff like that. It's just like clockwork. It's like guaranteed to happen. So I definitely wouldn't recommend anyone who is sensitive to bacteria.
Which leads me on to number two. If you have any gastrointestinal issues, then you definitely shouldn't come to Thailand. They said hello. But here's the reason why. When I first arrived, I actually got an ulcer that put me in the hospital, and it was insanely tough to overcome because I couldn't keep any of the food down. I was constantly throwing up, and the quality of the food really made it much worse to even try to get nutrients in my body. I didn't eat for a whole 9 days. I couldn't keep food down. It was horrifying, and I almost got an emergency flight back, but I was so determined to be here that I stayed, and luckily I recovered, but I was close to not recovering. I did in fact almost lose my life doing that because of one, the quality of the food and the quality of the water is just not what I've been used to.
Number three, you definitely don't want to come to Thailand if you have a large family.
If you have a large family and you're coming here bringing your children and stuff, it's not a place for kiddos at all. First of all, it's very dangerous. Like right now, we're walking the streets. I would not trust a kiddo to be walking around here and ensure their safety and ensure that one of these drivers would not see them.
Usually, sidewalks here from what we've seen, we've been to 3 cities in Thailand, and in every city, the sidewalks are very narrow, or there's a lot of obstacles to where you can't walk on the sidewalk. So oftentimes you'll have to walk in the street, and usually there's also people parked in the street. So you'll have to maneuver around those cars into the middle of the road. And it's not just cars that you're worried about. Lane filtering with mopeds and motorbikes is extremely common, and they are flying through cars. So if you aren't looking, you aren't paying attention, it's very likely that a moped will come right between cars as you're trying to walk around that car, and you could get hit.
Yeah, I've almost been clipped several times just walking, minding my own business. People they look out for you and they try to see you, but they come very close to hitting you. So imagine a young kid, like a toddler, someone half my height, they are not going to be able to see them flying at the speeds that they're flying at. So I definitely wouldn't recommend it if you're trying to bring kiddos here. It's mostly adult-centered anyways. And now number 4. Those of you who are trying to travel on a budget and do things as cheap as possible, I wouldn't recommend coming here for that reason, because if you do come here and you do pay those cheap prices, you're going to be finding a lot of surprises and low quality things like food and clothing items, stuff like that. For instance, we tried a ramen shop that was pretty close by that had suspiciously cheap ramen.
It was a 150 baht was the total bill for 2 ramen and a set of gyoza.
And as I'm finishing my bowl, a little surprise at the bottom of the bowl was just a bunch of ants. So I was devastated because I was so hungry, and that was incredibly disgusting, and it made me feel really sick. Definitely, you don't want to come here on a budget and try to cheap out on everything, because you're gonna get really, really cheap quality stuff, and really, it's not really gonna be worth it, honestly. It's not gonna be worth it for your health. It's not gonna be worth it to buy the cheap clothes or the cheap anything. Like, there is cheap clothes and there is good quality clothes, and you really gotta hunt for it, but it's not really gonna last you like a month, honestly. I've seen shoes and stuff and t-shirts and whatnot that wouldn't last 2 washes.
Another thing you shouldn't cheap out on is your accommodation.
It's definitely something you don't want to cheap out on, because we cheaped out on a few places and said no more of this, because there's a lot of lack of amenities, or they'll call it like a resort and this and that and try to catfish you in a way. It's like resort catfishing.
Yeah,
You know?
there'll also be a lot of images of the room online, which are just not going to be true. It'll look real nice in the photos, or they'll use a ultra wide lens to make the room appear bigger than it actually is. And when you show up, you'll be sorely disappointed. We also encountered a few times where we saw, at nighttime, we saw rats running through our rooms.
Huge rats. One of them looked like a little kitten. It was rough. I've jumped so many times at rats running underneath my feet or coming out of these little sewer holes. And yes, guys, we're walking. These are sewers. Look at this. Randomly, there's all the sewer lines underneath our feet right now, and rats will come out of those, and they'll give you a nice little surprise as you're walking. The locals, they're very kind to the animals and the environment around them. They're very loving to the animals, so I've seen a lot of little bowls and stuff that are left out for those animals, including the rats. And the next one, if you have a heat intolerance of any kind, it is always, like 80 degrees here?
No, more like 86.
Like 86 degrees, it's incredibly humid. You're gonna be sweaty. You can't really find any Thailand videos where the people aren't sweaty, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it's very hot here, very humid, and you will very much feel that heat. If you have any heat intolerance, or you're not really keeping up with your hydration, you're gonna struggle a little bit here, because we've been averaging like 13 miles a day of walking. That's taking taxis and stuff as much as we possibly can. And it's just, everything is just so close together. So you're gonna be walking quite a bit. That if you do have a heat intolerance, you're gonna struggle quite a bit. Is anyone with accessibility issues? I mean, first off, look at this road we're walking on here. If you're using a wheelchair or crutches or anything that prevents your mobility, definitely not a safe place for you to be, especially with all the mopeds zooming around, all the cars around us. It's not very safe, and I really don't recommend it for you.
The ground is very uneven. There are areas where they're just completely blocked off by telephone poles, or especially a bad thing here in Thailand is the electrical wires. They come hanging down so low, so chaotic that, like, for example, this right here could be completely blocked off by electrical lines, and you would have to go through the road to get around it. And unfortunately, not everywhere has a ramp where you can get down. It's just a drop off, just a curb basically. So it can be very difficult, especially like this area right here. I don't think this ramp is going to do you much justice.
This ramp is not going to do you any kind of justice if you have any accessibility issues.
Or this area right here especially. Look at this. How are you going to get around this on a wheelchair? There are 3 poles in the way. You cannot use this sidewalk. You're going to have to lift up your wheelchair, or however it is, up above this curb, go down this extremely steep ramp, and go out into the middle of the road where there are cars and, as you can see, mopeds just flying by, which we're gonna have to do probably as well, but you know, it's gonna be that much harder for someone with accessibility issues.
If you are sensitive to smells, and I say this with a lot of love, but there's a lot of random spots where you'll just be walking, minding your own business, and get hit really hard with the smell of sewage or other horrifying smells. Another reality to this place is there is a lot of tourism, and there are some, well, frankly, a lot of tourists that we've ran into that don't wear deodorant, and they stink to high heaven. And oh my goodness, it's atrocious.
You may find yourself waiting in line behind them, or like us, we were on a plane with them sitting behind us with no escape, no ventilation. It made us nauseous and nearly vomit.
I literally passed out on the plane from my head spinning because of a few individuals smelling too bad. Like, what do you do? What do you do? Do you say something? Do you spray a room spray? I don't know. I was trying not to be offensive, but it was quite an offensive smell, to be honest. I unfortunately am blessed with a really good sense of smell, and a lot of smells deeply mess me up because my head will start spinning. I'll get a headache if I smell something really bad, and there is a lot of random instances of that.
If you guys have any other ideas or experiences that you guys have experienced while visiting Thailand that you think other people should know about, make sure to leave a comment in the comment section and let us know, because we're still going to be in Thailand for a little longer, and we definitely want to be prepared for any unexpected things that might happen.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.